Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us on our webinar as we learn all the ins and outs, pros and cons, and the do's and don'ts of the 203K Streamline program. My name is Gary Martell. I'm one of the owners of Mountain West Financial, and I'm joined today by several of our great 203K Streamline underwriters.
Carlos.
Carrie. Maria.
And we're going to walk you through a lot of the, like I say, the ins and outs of the program. We're going to go through, this is also a certification program for those of you that are certified to do this. And it's also going to be, when we're finished, we're going to leave a copy of it on our training tools on our website. So you can go back and refer to some of the screenshots, and especially as we go through, excuse me, the LT and the worksheets and the HUDs and those type of things to give you some additional resources to use later on. A lot of people have not used this 203K Streamline in the past, and what we want to do is make sure that you understand the pros and cons. It's got a few bad raps through the years from people that have said that they're familiar with it and use it, and unfortunately get halfway into it and forget some of the real basic parts of it. Those of you that are participating here to get certified, you must listen to the entire webinar. During the webinar, there's a couple key points that we will point out to you that you'd probably run into in a certification test afterwards. Many of you, as far as LOs and processors, will need a certification number in order to participate in this program. You'll receive that after your test is taken. Within about 48 hours, you'll receive a certificate from Mountain West showing you've gone through the training and a pass with flying colors, especially with such great teachers as I have with me today. So, why do people use the 203K Streamline? Well, again, it's an FHA insured loan, and it's made so people can purchase and refinance an existing home and include the cost to rehabilitate or repair in the same loan. So again, this is one loan, one program. We fund one time. There's only one payment. Not only does the borrower get to refinance and pay off existing debt or purchase and achieve the home, but then they also have money set aside that they can complete the rehabilitation or upgrades they're looking for. So what this can do for you is obviously increase loan origination volume. It also helps expand your market reach and enables you to go and partner up with maybe some realtors or people that have houses in need of repair and be able to offer them other solutions to help either sell or repair a house or get it ready to sell for the future. And obviously it allows you to help borrowers find affordable housing and realize the dream of home ownership. In this program, many times it allows a borrower to acquire a house that previously has only been available to those with deep pockets or have the cash to go in and purchase a house that's in need of repair. So this is an affordable, stable financing solution that combines both the purchase of the home along with the cost of repairs into one loan. FHA guidelines apply. We do have a few overlays, and we're going to go through those with you as we get into the credit portion of this. It allows people to borrow against the value of the home after improvements, and Carlos is going to go through as we do the worksheet about the 110% and how that applies and what cases it doesn't apply as well. Low down payment requirements, as much as 3.5% of the total project cost. And I say project cost because a lot of people say it's 3.5% of the down payment. But again, remember that there's also a construction account with this, and the borrower not only has to have the 3.5% down for the purchase, but they also have to have 3.5% of the construction amount as well. So it's the total project that they have to have 3.5% about. You might want to remember that. That could show up later. Flexible credit qualifying. Currently, Mountain West offers 620 FICO scores as our minimum requirement for all of our government loans. 30-year fixed-rate mortgages, fully assumable to qualified borrowers, and that's again after the loan's closed. Somebody could later on come up and decide to purchase this, just like they would a normal FHA loan. These are assumable to somebody who qualifies for them with whatever other conditions the seller or borrower at that time work out. This is only available owner-occupied 1 and 2 units, PUDs, condos, and REOs. It is not eligible for manufactured housing, and we get that question quite often. When we're finished today, we will in no way be able to cover all of the nuances of this program. Otherwise, we'd be here for 2 days, and you guys would probably get tired and not want to listen to us. In fact, you're probably going to be with us about another hour and 15 minutes today. So if you don't have enough coffee, you might want to quickly get a cup, or you might want to write down this email address here. This is available all the time. We have a bank of people, and these 3 experts here are manning this. So if you have a question regarding the 203K specific program, you would send it to this email address. Our response time is typically within 2 hours. Now, if you have a normal FHA question, this is not where you would go. You would go to Loan Scenarios with an S at mwfinc.com, and there'll be these underwriters may participate in that, but also we have other folks set up to answer those questions if it doesn't have to do with the 203K Streamline program. Okay, I hope all you guys got your coffee and ready to go, because the easy part's almost done. Borrowers, the target market is for borrowers purchasing a home in need of minor rehabilitation. If it's major rehab and it requires permits and that kind of stuff, Maria will go through a little bit more of that. But you know, some houses, when the repair or rehabilitation gets too large, you'd want to go to the regular 203K program, which Mountain West currently does not offer. But this is really good using for REO foreclosures and short sales. When people are purchasing those, a lot of those houses were left in a little bit of disrepair, so it enables people to go in and paint and carpet and some other stuff. Incomplete renovations, you know, somebody hoped they could do it and they find themselves financially strapped. Again, we will complete renovations that are out there as long as it's not too involved. And people say, well, what happens if they took out a permit to start a renovation and at the end of the day they only needed $4,000 or $5,000 left to complete it, or maybe $10,000, but it was done up to code and the permits were already taken out? In that case, typically we would do that loan. Again, it just depends on how extensive it is. But typically, if you have to pull a permit to do this, the answer would be no. Outdated kitchens and bathrooms, they're perfect for this, because somebody can actually gut a kitchen, come back in and put in new cabinets, new floors, new countertops, and in some cases even new appliances, and actually have a brand new kitchen out of this loan. So, and I've seen a lot of people when they're looking to sell older homes, sellers, I've seen some folks put some really good, go in partnerships with a listing agent, go into a borrower's home or a seller's home and say, why don't we sell this under the 203K program? And they actually put samples of carpet and countertops and cabinets and stuff as part of the selling proposition for an older home. Because remember, today a lot of people are trying to sell homes and they're in competition with either new homes or a rehabbed home where, you know, some sort of equity purchaser went in and flipped a house, and now that's their competition in the street. So this allows an existing seller to sell a little bit of a tired home to somebody who doesn't have the money to go in and renovate it, but they could do it if they take out a 203K loan. Lots of ideas how this loan can work. Just remember, there cannot be any of identity of interest between parties, especially between seller and borrower in the transaction. And you can refer to Mortgagee Letter 2000-25 if you have questions on that. So I'm just going to cover a couple more program highlights, and then we're going to get into, for some of you guys that love to crunch numbers, we're going to get into the nuts and bolts, all the fun stuff on this program. First of all, it's a really easy write-up form that's completed with this. Those of you that may have participated in the old 203K program that's been around for a long time, very complicated write-up form. It's like a 9-page deal, and it's got 5 sections to it, how much is at which draw period, so on and so forth. And that program is still alive and well, and it's still fairly complicated, but it is designed for much more in-depth projects. So ours, Mountain West, has an easy-to-use form. It's located on the website, and we'll go through it a little bit later. It just has, it's real simple, 1 page, 50% now, 50% later, and then a contingency. One thing to remember, and I'm going to state this, and I'm sure the other underwriters will state this as well, 50% of the funds may be dispersed at funding, 50% of the funds dispersed at funding, and there will be only one other disbursement, period. And that's usually about 2 weeks after all the work is completed and it's been inspected. Work can be completed by a contractor or the borrower. The borrower must be qualified and approved to do the work. And Many of you guys, the borrower will be very optimistic and say, well, I can do this, I can do that, I can do this. And they may be able to perform that work, but unless they're licensed and they have the experience to do it, it has to be done by a licensed contractor. Work must be done in the agreed upon time frame. We ask that all work be able to be completed within 3 months after closing. Another important thing to remember that you cannot have a contingency fund for the payments, the PITI. Not permitted on the 203K Streamline. You should remember that later on. If you were doing the full 203K, and again, that allows a house to be totally rehabilitated, the 203K Streamline requires that the borrower be able to occupy the property within 30 days of closing. And so we would allow it to be left over with a little bit minimum repairs before they move in. But realistically, if it's a large portion of the project, then the answer would be no. And again, remember, the borrower has to qualify with just that payment because there is no PITI contingency left over. Loans fully assumable to a qualified borrower, we talked about that. FHA jumbo loan amounts are not permitted. What is available, depending on whether you're doing this, depending on what county you're doing this in, it's either the county maximum or 417 plus MIP. That's the maximum loan amount that Mountain West will do on this program. Maria, why don't you go through a little bit of the work that can or can't be done?
Okay, I'm going to talk to you about some typical eligible improvements. These eligible improvements are also listed on HUD's Mortgagee Letter 2005-19. Many types of the improvements are eligible provided they become a permanent part of the real property and add value. For instance, we have roofs, gutters, downspouts. You can add heating, ventilation in your AC systems. You can add flooring, tile wood, etc. You can put in a new well septic system. We have painting, interior and exterior, including lead-based paint stabilization. We have windows, doors, exterior siding. Minor remodeling, nothing structural. If the house is structurally not sound, we're probably not going to be able to help you with this one. Freestanding appliances, when at least 3,000 of basic repairs are complete. We have a maximum of $2,000 cap on that. That's referred to in HUD's Mortgagee Letter 2005-19 also. We have safety, energy efficient items, and electrical upgrades. Your energy efficient items can also include weatherization up to a total of $2,000. We have handicap accessibility improvements, and we have pool repairs up to $1,500. Let's see. We have termite work and mold remediation. Most termite work is allowed and should be included in the work write-up. If mold remediation is part of the work proposal, there must be an inspection from a licensed mold remediation company. The work is to be done by the company, and they are to provide a clear mold report when completed. In the case you have termite or mold work, you will have additional inspections when the work is completed.
We're probably going to discuss those additional inspections on the GFE when we get there.
Utilities and mechanical systems, all systems are to be operational. Utilities are not required to be on at the time of closing, but all systems are to have been checked for possible repairs. In the rare cases that you have that a mechanical system such as gas, electricity, pool waste, HVAC, or water have not been checked, Mountain West will require a home inspection by a certified home inspector or a licensed tradesperson. Any system that was not functioning at the time of the appraisal or inspection must be specifically addressed. There should be a concise list of repair requirements that are needed to have all the systems working properly. Well, a list of repairs must be included in the bids. The licensed trade person may not be selected or related to our seller. Any proposed repairs to bring the property up to minimum property standards must be completed within 45 days, as it is a requirement the house be occupied within 60 days after closing. We're going to require that the borrower sign a financial release liability.
And the reason why we have that release of liability form signed, in case that they're agreeing to close with one of the systems not operational at the time of closing, is that they realize that there could be additional hiccups in getting the gas to function or the well to function or so on and so forth. So
HUD does have some non-acceptable improvements for this 203K Streamline. Those items are luxury items such as swimming pools, hot tubs, tennis courts, gazebos, barbecue pits, saunas, or alterations to support commercial use of any sort. Structural items, large, structural items, items that require a permit, some exceptions. If you're repairing your roof, you may need to take out a permit. We're not referring to that type of a permit. We have walls, fencing, and most yard work, landscaping are not acceptable improvements. Make note that work must include all items required to bring your property up to minimum property standards. Now, Carrie Rutland is going to take you into some credit guidelines on our 203K Streamline. Carrie?
Hi. The credit guidelines on the 203K Streamline also have regular FHA guidelines applied to them also. Desktop underwriter, loan prospector, or manual underwriting. Minimum 620 FICO scores are required on all loans with DU approval. 640 is required on all manual underwriting. If you have thin credit, a minimum 620 FICO score and scoreboard approval are required. Refer to MWF Bulletin 2009-32. Bankruptcies and foreclosures. Chapter 7 allowed for or after 24 months since the discharge date, and good credit has been reestablished after. Chapter 13 allowed after 12 months of payout period, provided performance has been satisfactory and borrower receives court approval to enter into the mortgage transaction. Foreclosures or deed in lieu of allowed after 3 years. Court-ordered judgments and tax liens must be paid. Tax liens must be included in the refinance, or may be included in the refinance. Program eligibility. Types of mortgages. 30-year fixed mortgages and optional temporary 2-1 buy-down. Purchase of owner-occupied primary residence. Attached and detached single-family residence, condos, and PUDs. 1 to 2 unit properties. Properties over 1 year old from notice of completion.
And Carrie, we have run into this several times where we've received 203Ks where they're looking to do this and the property was not over a year old. Is that correct?
Yes.
So we want to make sure this is one of the hiccups that we've seen, or pitfalls we've seen people get into, where a property has not had a notice of completion filed more than a year previous. So just be careful if somebody comes to you with a house that's relatively new.
Also, the eligible borrowers. Each borrower must have a valid Social Security number. U.S. citizens, permanent and non-permanent resident aliens, non-occupant co-borrowers, there cannot be any identity of interest. Flexible down payment and source of funds. Minimum $5,000 rehabilitation amount. 3.5 minimum cash investment is required of the total project cost. It can come from checking, savings, or other depository accounts. Proceeds from a 401k. Gifts from a relative, fiance, or domestic partner. Cash on hand. With cash on hand, please refer to MWF guidelines. Cash reserves are not required. Interested party contributions allowed up to 6% of the purchase price.
And for those of you, we're giving this webinar in early March. It is believed that sometime in the near future, the 6% is going to drop down to 3% as early as a couple months from now. So if that's the case, it's whatever the interested party contributions are at the time you're originating your loan.
Contingency reserve are used to cover health, safety, and unplanned issues that arise during construction. Mountain West does require 20% contingency on all 203K Streamlines. HUD does state that it has to be 10% or higher, but MWF does require 20%.
And we've elected to do that through the years because we have been funding the full 203K loans as well as the Streamline refinances for years and years. We're currently, again, not offering the full 203K, but there's a lot of optimistic, we're here to help you guys close loans and create happy clients when it's all done. There's very few other places a borrower can go today to acquire money to complete the transaction. So if there's not enough funds in the construction account to get this done, and with a little bit of contingency for things that go wrong, and the borrower gets to the end of the road and they still need several $1,000s and it's not there, you end up with what could have been a great transaction and a happy borrower. I have personally been involved as a originator where we ran out of money at the end of the transaction, and my borrower had nowhere else to get the money, and they had gone through the contingency. A lot of people are very optimistic on what they can do to get this done, and just remember when it's done, there's additional things that can be done with that contingency besides just leave it there.
If the full 20% contingency is not used after all the construction has been completed, the remaining amount of the contingency can be applied to principal reduction or used to make other improvements on the property. If you're requesting additional improvements to be made, additional approval is required for all additional improvements. Determining the value. The loan to value is based on the lesser of the sales price or as is appraised value plus borrower paid repairs minus excess sales concessions, or 110% of as completed appraised value, except on condominiums. You're only allowed to go up to 100%. Refer to box A3 on the 203K worksheet. When a 203K loan is coupled with an energy efficient mortgage, the base loan amount may not exceed the county maximum per mortgagee letter 2009-18. Now, the case number assignment results. This is a copy of the FHA case number. You would go contact Mountain West Financial to order this. Make sure you specify that you're looking for a 203K, because there's certain fields that have to be completed. Under the construction code, it's substantial rehabilitation has to be under the construction code. The ADP code on a regular 203K Streamline is 702. If you're adding an EEM onto the 203K Streamline, your ADP code would be 807. Under housing program, you're going to put improvements 203K. Down on towards the bottom of the screen, you'll see 203 consultant ID number. You would put 203KS. If your borrowers have chosen to get a consultant, which is not required on a 203K Streamline, you would not put the consultant ID number there. On all 203K Streamlines, you would put 203KS.
And that's something you probably would want to remember to refer to in case you're doing this as a certification. So again, this is typically, if you're one of our retail partners, you would be ordering the case assignment yourself. If you are from the broker community or one of our correspondent partners, then you would be submitting, as a broker, you'd be submitting this to our appraisal department. Just make sure you have these appropriate fields correctly identified.
Now Carlos is going to go over all of the worksheets and the Streamline 203K write-up form.
Hello. In this case, the bid for the loan is $21,000. The way you complete this is basically on the repair tab. You would put more or less, like for example, air and heating units. It was $6,000 to complete, so basically he'll use 50% of the initial draw, which is $3,000, and then the final draw of the other 50% of $3,000. In regards to the second item, is basically replace the roof, is came out to $6,400. You'll use $3,200 as the initial and $3,200 as the final, and so on and so on. In the bottom, it also shows the contingency, which is $4,200. This one has to be signed and completed by all parties, borrower, contractor, contractor's information. Now we're going to look into the 92700. The way you complete this is basically item number A1. You'll get that basically what's from your purchase contract, which in this case it's $2,400. A2, basically the appraiser will show you that the assets value of the house, in this case, is also $124,000. He will also give you the after improved value. In this case, after the work is done, it's $151,000. And then you could go up to 110% of the after improved value. In this case, is 166,100. In regards to how to calculate the actual new sales price, you will complete section B, which is in regards to B1, the bid is $21,000. Item B2 is the contingency. In this case, it's $4,200. So it's 20% of the actual bid. In regards to B3, the inspections, it's 2 inspections of $150 a piece, and then 2 title fees of $75 a piece, total of $450. Then on item, and then on B, actually in number 9, there's other fees.
Yes, this is where I was speaking about you might have additional inspection fees where you could add the termite inspection, a mold inspection, or lead-based paint inspection. You would add it here on line 9.
In regards to number B12, that's the supplemental origination fee. That is the greater of $350 or 1.5% of B10. That's a fee that Mountain West keeps. The subtotal for the rehab is $26,000 with $34.75. You would add that on in regards to C1, it would drop the loan amount to $124,000, which is the lesser of A1 or A2. In this case, it's $124,000. It's the same. Then you add the total rehab of B14, which is $26,000 with $34.75. The new sales price basically is going to be $150,000 with $34.75. You would have to drop off the cents to calculate your base loan amount. Because if you use the cents, you're going to be off your $1 or so. So basically, you will use $150,000 with $34 times 96.5%. In this case, it's $144,782. And then you use your upper MIP, which in this case is 1%. This may change based on any future changes by HUD. You would have to use whatever's available at that time of this loan. Basically, and then it'll give you the total loan amount of $146,229. So that's going to be your total loan amount with the upfront MIP.
Carlos, before you go on to that, I want to go back to this origination fee. Just so you know, this has to be on every 203K streamline. If one of these comes in and this has not been disclosed, and I'm going to go through the GFE with you guys, Mountain West will not accept the loan to do it. So this is an origination fee that comes to MWF for managing this program. If it's not disclosed to the borrower when it comes in, unfortunately, that's not a loan that we will accept.
Now you can see side to side the 92700 and your LT. The first check will show you the new sales price, $150,000 for $34. The second check is going to show you your base loan amount. Your third check is your upfront MIP, and your fourth check is the total loan amount. In regards to the appraised value, in this case, we're going to use $151,000 because that's the after improved value. If it's a condo, you would have to keep that value. But if it's not, and let's say your sales price is $152,000 with $34, you could go up to 110% of the after improved value. And then we're gonna see a 2 or 3K with an EEM.
Well, let's get complicated with this, shall we? I know that all underwriters, the more things we can add on to the 203K Streamline program, the more these guys like it, right?
Yes.
No.
The first thing is the only difference is in the case number, it will show that it's an 802 instead of 702, which Carrie explained earlier.
You mean an 807?
807, yeah. Sorry. The second item that's going to change from the first 92700 is $5,500, which is the energy improvement. Then in regards to how to calculate the loan amount, it looks confusing, but it's really easy. In regards to item number B14, it actually, if you add all those amounts, it came out to $32,000, but then you subtract the energy improvements, which is the $5,500. You would then add the $124,000, which is your sales price, and then you add the $27,233.75, which equals a total of $151,233. That's your sales price. Then, in regards to, you still do your 96.5%, it gives you a loan amount of $145,939. Then you add the $5,500 of energy efficient improvements on top of that, will equals a loan amount of $151,439. Then you do your regular 1%, and then your total will give you $152,953.
Now, for those of you that really want to dive into this a little more, what we're going to do is we are going to have in our resources, along with this PowerPoint presentation, we're going to separately have another one just re-explaining over the maximum mortgage worksheet, the 203K 92700, and it'll be a little more in depth, because we know as you're adding EEMs or weatherization or that stuff, it gets more complicated. Each one is not difficult after you've done several of them, but again, if you're doing your first one, and many times you guys can put one of these together, forward it to one of the underwriters, and they will review it with you after you at least made a stab at getting it done properly. Is that correct?
Yes.
Just email the 203K questions at nwfinc.com, and one of us will take care of it.
Good. Okay, so let's make it even more difficult, shall we?
No, we're going to see it side to side.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
That's still difficult.
Yes. The first check is going to basically show you your new sales price. But as you can see, in regards to the appraised value, we could go up to 110% because the sales price, which was $151,250, exceeded the after improved value. In this case, you could use the $166,100. That's the time you use that. Unless it's a condo, then you have to use the actual only 100%, which is $151,000. The second check basically is going to show you the same thing: your base loan amount, your upper. Second is your upper MIP, and then your total loan amount. That's in regards to your EM.
So the LT, the transmittal itself is really not that difficult after you get your worksheet completed.
Yes, it's just,
correct?
yeah.
And now I do know that there is a little more complication as you're trying to work this through. You know, there's a lot of different LOS systems out there, origination systems, and sometimes you have to get the work done in one, print it out, and move over to the other. Maybe you could explain that better.
If you're working out a point, I recommend you finish your 92700 first. Then after you're done, you have print it, because then go into the system and do your corrections on your 1003, because it will change your loan amounts and everything. So that's and because if you go back to 92700, it will be different. So that's why print the 92700 first, do your corrections, and then do your corrections on your LT and your 1003.
Good.
In regards to weatherization, basically we could go up to $2,000, and the way you do this is basically you add your weatherization on top of your sales price. The sales price, it was $124,000, and then your weatherization is $2,000. So basically your sales price will be $126,000. Your first, and then basically you do the same thing as your regular 203K form. Your bid, your contingency, your fees, and then I'll give you basically new loan amounts higher because you're adding the weatherization on top of the sales price. In this case, your weatherization on C3, it's $152,000 with $34.75. Remember, take off the cents when you're calculating your base loan amounts. Your base loan amount will be $146,712. Your upper MIP, and then your total loan amount. And then we're going to see them side to side, and it's basically the same thing. The first check will basically show you the base, your new sales price, and remember, you could go up to 110% of the appraised value because in this case, this was not a condo. So you could use 166 because if not, you're going to be over the original after improved value, and you have to use the lesser of the two to calculate your base loan amounts. Your second check basically is your base. Third check is your upfront, and the fourth check is your total loan amounts.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and start talking about some of the GFE and the HUD-1 and some of the other things. Basically, on your GFE, there's only a few things that fall in there. Remember, the GFE is designed for closing costs and disclosing to a borrower what their costs are going to be affiliated with the loan. So there's a few things you want to remember. There's only 3 things that show up on the GFE. First of all, the work that's being done is not a closing cost, so that is not disclosed on your good faith estimate. Neither is the contingency. The rest of the items are, and where they should be broken down properly is, remember we talked about that supplemental origination fee. That ends up being an our origination charge. So you want to go into your fee worksheet, add that in there, and it will show in your block 1 on your GFE. Also, if you're having your 203K inspection fees, like Maria had mentioned earlier, depending on how complicated, and if you're having mold and if there was mold or termite, these inspection fees, I would highly recommend, the more complicated the project is, the more inspection fees you put in there, because otherwise there'll be a cure at some point in time. So your inspection fees would show here, and if you're having title updates, and we recommend you always at least put 2 in there, it would show up in your title service fees. Now you would go into your initial fee worksheet to put those in, but in here we have 2 re-inspections at $150 a piece, 2 title updates of $75 a piece. So otherwise your title fee would be $700. So in this case it goes up to $850. Remember, excuse me, you don't have to put in your contingency nor your work on your GFE. So let's kind of look at a final HUD going through. Now again, we're still using Carlos's example of $21,000. But what I did do is, because I want to make this a little more difficult, is we ended up putting the weatherization in here as well. Weatherization in most cases can be treated much like just the normal funds. You can either have the weatherization doled out 50-50 as your work's being done with your 203K, or you can have it all done at the end and paid to a contractor separately. Either way, it ups your sales price $2,000 if you're including that. If you're doing EEM, that's done a little different, but in reality, you could actually put all 3 together if you want to make life really complicated. But typically, in most cases, we find just the EEM or just the 203K Streamline by itself is sufficient enough to get the job done. In this case, remember on your HUD, where we'd be looking at is typically you're going to see under 808 the 203 line 800 series in here, the 203K proceeds. Now, it can be in several different places, but what we see most of the time is it's in the 800 series. Now, there was a total of $27,650 was what the total amount on the bottom of the 203K worksheet was. We only have 27.2 here because this is the first draw, the second draw, and the contingency. Remember, the rest of the fees are dispersed out either as title, origination fees, or re-inspection fees. So I've also seen under this 800 series, we've sometimes seen where they will just do the 27,650 in one block, and then at the end, I'll show you one where they just put an addendum to the HUD. There's not an exact science how this is done. Just remember that your supplemental origination fee has to be shown in that category. Your additional fees for inspections and title updates are shown here, and then on page 3, you end up with your origination here, and the other title, the other inspection fee for the 203Ks would show up on page 3 of your HUD. I've mentioned a lot of times what we see is just because at the close, you could have, we'll say, 2 or 3 contractors that are involved with this. You maybe have, 1 general and 3 subs, and they're all getting paid out at closing their first half. Remember, only 50% gets paid out initially, then the other 50%. None of the contingency is paid until the rest of the work's done. So contingency is never paid out on the first draw. So what you may find is 2 or 3 or 4 contractors paid out. And in that case, typically we will see an addendum that says 203K draw to contractor A, B, C, D. There could be as many as we want. And then the rest of it's going to be made out to Mountain West Financial, basically for the rest of the fees that will end up being held in the construction account until it's used. The second half to draw the contingency and reinspection fees.
Also, to the check will be payable to the borrower and the contractor.
Absolutely. So remember, anytime there's a contractor involved. In fact, if there's not a contractor involved, when you have a borrower that's doing it themselves, there's an additional form called a self-help agreement. And again, the borrower has to be qualified to do that work. And we're also going to look at the amount that they're being charged there as reasonable, so that in case the borrower can't perform it, we are able to hire that work out.
He cannot pay himself. It's basically you're just
Material only.
Yes.
And the reason why the material only is for that very reason. We're not going to allow him to receive monies paid. If you've ever been involved with sweat equity in an FHA transaction, that's where a borrower actually gets money for their labor performed. The 203K Streamline does not pay a borrower if you're putting in a request. The borrower can only put in materials they're using for the job. They cannot include any of their own personal labor. Thanks. So we're just going to kind of sum up and give you guys a couple hints on some of the stuff that goes on. Make sure that the supplemental origination fee is disclosed up front and on the GFE. Again, I can't emphasize that enough. You know, always, whenever in doubt, over-disclose. Always. I mean, you can always back something out. You can't add anything in. I think we've all learned that valuable lesson over the last year or so. Remember, it's either 1.5% of B10 or of the maximum mortgage amount, or $350, which is ever greater. It must be shown in box 1 of the GFE, which is under my origination charge. All inspections, re-inspections must be disclosed in block 3. And for our example today, we use 2 of each, but I've seen them come in with 5 re-inspections. And always know that at the end of the day, we need our appraiser to go back and inspect the work that was finally done and completed before you get the second draw. Make sure all utilities and mechanical systems are working and turned on and inspected. That'll save your borrower and you extra money later on down the road. And when in doubt, disclose extra inspections. You know, there's also a guide that comes out, a draw request guide at closing that goes out to your borrower that includes a group of forms. The mortgager's letter of completion, this is what they sign and send us, saying that the work's done, and will you come out and send somebody out to inspect it. A W-9. Now, on our website, we have a section under forms for 203K, and it lists all the forms that you need to complete a 203K transaction. Not only do we have the 92700, but we have W-9s, and we have lien release forms, and basically all the forms that are required are available in one spot. I can't emphasize enough from an originator standpoint to give a handful of these to your borrower when you're doing this, because one of the biggest holdups, and you'll find this on our certification test, on every transaction we get ready to fund, we do not have a W-9 for all the contractors on file. We will not fund the loan. If we have 4 contractors or subcontractors doing the bid and they're in the write-up, I need a W-9 for every single one of them. What that tells us is their information on who we're making the payments to and the Social Security or the taxpayer ID number. I can tell you that we have more transactions held up with funding for this one form than any other reason. So they're available, pretty inexpensive to print out. Make sure you have a handful of them if you're doing this. Almost always the title company, we're going to need a conditional waiver and release upon final payment from contractors. This way that there's no mechanics liens put on a property later. I know that we probably never, and I'm sure you don't anticipate having change orders at any time during this transaction, but unfortunately probably 50 to 75% of them during a transaction find out that they had miscalculated, or they get to the end of the road and they calculate it perfectly and they have an additional $3,000 that their loan officer coached to them, hey, pull this out, and if you have that extra $3,000, do a change order, and then put the additional cabinets or countertop in the bathrooms or whatever. So after all the other work's done, and we know that there's money to get everything done, there can be a contingent that can be used at that point. Here's the change order form. I'm just going to briefly go through the origination process because it's a little different than on a regular loan. First of all, the borrower locates the property in need of repairs and determines what the home needs in the way of improvements or upgrades. The borrower determines the improvements needed and schedules whatever inspections necessary and creates a list of improvements. They make sure that they get a write-up either with a contractor or without, and about 99.2% of the loans that we do have contractors involved, and that's what we would prefer to see. And we get a write-up. The write-up is on that form that we have. You can put an addendum on there if you need to have something that is a little more explicit. You know, more information is better than less, but it's put into 2 draws, one at closing, or it can be at closing if you want, and the second one a couple weeks after all the work is done, it's been inspected, and then we release the second payment. Really important, this transaction cannot be done without the appraisal in hand. It's really all you're doing. If you send us a loan without the appraisal, the work to be done and stuff, it's just a credit approval. And then if that's the case you need, if you're looking for a credit approval, send it to the pre-approval desk. Do not send it in the 203K group. These are complicated loans, and without a clear list of what's being done, which has to be given to the appraiser when the appraisal is ordered so that they can truly do a before and after value and list the improvements, then it's a waste of time. So if you know you're going to do this, run your file through DU, get your DU approval for credit, but do not send in a file without an appraisal and a list of improvements. It's really, it's frustrating for the underwriters. We want to be proactive and accommodating, but without that other information, we're really, you know, that's not a good use of your time nor ours. Just remember, construction should always begin right after closing, but always within 30 days, and you have 90 days to complete the work. So let's just do a few wrap-up things. The process. Remember, 50% of the rehabilitation can be dispersed at funding. They don't have to be, but we see that 99% of the time. If you're working with a contractor, make sure there's W-9 in there, and like Carlos had mentioned earlier, we always put out a 2-party check, so it's made in the name of the borrower and the contractor. Included with the disbursement is an instruction letter that explains how the final disbursements are made, and again, that draw package guide goes to your client, and it's got like a 4-page thing that explains the process again. But one of the big things that we see in this is that people don't sit down with the clients and explain the entire process, how it works. If you have questions, contact your Mountain West account executive, your branch manager, or send an email to the 203K department here if you have questions on your numbers and figuring how that works. An inspection by the original appraiser is required before funds are released, no matter how large the loan is. So even if it's below $15,000, Mountain West does require still that we do an inspection before we release the last funds. I'm going to say it one last time, just in case you didn't hear me the first 10 times. 2 disbursements, 1 at closing, 1 after all the work's been done. As we're wrapping this up, the last couple of things. Make sure all impacted parties understand the draws when the first and the subsequent draws are made. You know, one of the biggest frustrations we get is right after close, money's been released. About a week later, we get a borrower calling and saying, my plumber won't do any more work until they get some more money. And I mean, you know, you just need to make sure they realize they get 50% of the work up front, 50% when it's done. If a contractor doesn't understand that and somehow is not able to function under that scenario, they're going to have to either way. So the borrower needs to make sure they choose a contractor that, I mean, he may be the first person that finishes his work up front, but until all the work's done and the whole project's complete, they don't get the rest of their money. So we've had contractors call us and state that, you know, I finished my job, you know, 30, 45 days ago, I need payment, And again, it's when the entire project's completed, inspected, and then we release the final draw. This 203K Streamline is not for all, every project that comes up with. Everybody has to understand how it works to make sure it's done. Title must be clear also before final payments made. We want to make sure we don't have any mechanics liens that are put on the property. Carrie, what's the most common reason for delays?
Missing W-9s from each contractor.
The cost consultant can be made part of the process, but just remember, HUD does not allow that to be part of the work write-up and cannot be included in the 203K funds. So I know for years and years as a retail loan officer, I had cost consultants with me, and I found that they're a reality check. You can sit down with a borrower, and the borrower says, I can get this done, and I can do it all for $5,000. And in your mind, you know that can't be done. Don't allow them to get into a project like that. You need to bring in either another contractor or say, you know what, we're going to have a cost consultant on here so that they can go through, they understand construction and can tell you can't build 3 fireplaces, remodel a kitchen, and add on, replace your roof all for $3,000. I mean, we need to be realistic with that. There's a lot of different places you can get information for the 203K Streamline loan. First of all, you can look up, and if you want to involve a consultant, and each one of them is probably a couple $100, but also additional information can be found on HUD's website under http://www.hud.gov. If you only get this far, you can finagle yourself through the rest of them till you get to the 203K, because there's a lot of stuff that says 4 questions on this. But HUD.gov gets you into answering all kinds of questions regarding FHA transactions. Mortgagee letter 2005-50 is a big one that has a lot of information on it. In fact, it replaced another one from earlier that had some information involved as well, but this is probably the main one that we refer to for most of the FHA 203K Streamline program. If you have questions, again, we're here. We would much rather you ask us a question in advance than send us something that we can't fund for you. So feel free to shoot an email to this, and again, your response time will be 2 hours or less. For those of you guys that are doing this and being certified, you now have 30 seconds to write this down. Just kidding. We will leave this screen up for probably the next 15-20 minutes until you get all that resolved. We do appreciate you guys doing this program. We think it's one of the best loans out there, especially in today's market with a lot of REOs and properties that have been slightly damaged, and gives a new borrower money to purchase the home and do the repairs to make their home what they want it. So with that, I think we're going to sign off for the day. From myself, Gary Martell,
Carlos,
Carrie,
Maria.
we look forward to doing business with you on this program. Have a great day.